In this Star Wars Battlefront 2 video, we will be taking a look at the effects that the game's resurgence will have. Plus, I will be sharing with you some very interesting data that I haven't seen anyone talk about. Before we do dive into all of today's news though, make sure you do subscribe to this channel so you won't miss any future Star Wars Battlefront 2 videos. So, as I said in my previous video, what this Battlefront 3 movement won't do is bring back Battlefront 2 updates, or Battlefront 3 coming from DICE and EA especially. There are just too many real and logical reasons, some of them I went over in my previous video. However, all of this talk and playing the game will probably do something else positive, which makes it a valid movement. It will cause something that, at this point, we need to take regardless, because we don't have anything else besides a 7-year-old game that has not had updates for 5 years. The dedication to a 7-year-old game and desire for a new one hopefully will start some higher-ups talking about a potential new Star Wars multiplayer shooter. The momentum in terms of social media talk is a lot, and that's great. But playing Battlefront 2 is also the main thing to do. Saying something online is one thing, especially in corners of the internet unrelated to Star Wars, which really doesn't do anything. But actually playing the game is another. People are still buying Battlefront 2, more so as of the past few weeks, especially on PC, which is important to those companies like EA, Lucasfilm and Disney compared to just words on social media. By now, given how widespread this movement is, it will have been noticed by people behind the scenes, even though there will be no public acknowledgement, of course. That's just how publicly traded companies work. Hell, even Kyber V2 has several thousand people paying at least $5 a month to help support the team and its beta, plus give Battlefront 2 a future lasting many years to come. And before anyone makes a comment, EA are totally fine with Kyber. The Kyber team have a totally fine relationship with EA. Whilst the next multiplayer Star Wars game won't necessarily be an entry in the Battlefront franchise, again for various reasons I've made clear before, it's a good ball to get rolling. It could potentially lead to a Battlefront reboot down the line if that game was successful, to show more publishers why they should be doing things like that. It just could follow afterwards if it is a success, unlike Hunters. Chances of success in the games industry right now are slimmer than ever before. As of February this year, over 70% of PS5 and Xbox Series X and S players in the United States of America played at least one of the top 10 live service games the month before, with more than 40% of all playtime spent on those same 10 live service games. Every single week, Call of Duty, Fortnite and GTA Online, in that order, are the 3 most played games on PlayStation and Xbox. And that is what most people pretty much only play. They pick one of those games and stick to it, and have stuck to it for the past few years, or longer than a decade in the case of Call of Duty and GTA Online. If you're wondering whereabouts Battlefront 2 places in the most played games on console, we do have some numbers. It's not quite representative because it's a much smaller sample size, but still something worth keeping in mind. So, a 3.1 million true achievements players on Xbox. In the week ending May 18th, Battlefront 2 was the 26th most played game on Xbox, up from 33rd place the week before. Meanwhile, on PlayStation it came in 40th place, which is a re-entry because they only count the top 40 games of 3.5 million active PlayStation accounts. So yeah, not really very high up, but much higher because of all of the factors I mentioned in the previous video, May 4th and/or Fortnite, the Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary, things like that. Meanwhile on PC it's seen the bigger growth, mainly because people are switching to PC, and of course Kyber V2 coming soon. Turning our attention back to Battlefront 3 now and what it should be, I want to touch on some issues regarding Battlefront 3 and player expectations. In my last video I mentioned how there are sort of 2 camps. Those that believe DICE's Battlefront games were not great because it was a Star Wars reskin of Battlefield, and those that believe it's not enough like Battlefield. Naturally, people on both sides made comments on my video sharing their opinions, saying the opposing side is absolutely wrong. These are real-world examples of fans that want to enjoy Battlefront game, but on completely different opinions of how DICE's Battlefront games are and what Battlefront should be. I also received comments from people who had ideas of what they want Battlefront 3 to be without anything to do with Battlefield, but those ideas are not what a Battlefront game is. Ever since the beginning in 2004, Battlefront has been a large-scale trooper and vehicular objective-focused game. It is not a 6 versus 6 Call of Duty reskin or a 1 versus 1 heroes versus villains only dueling game, which is what some people want Battlefront 3 to be. Those could be Star Wars games, but they aren't Battlefront. They are their own thing. We don't have to just recycle the name, we can call it something different, and then it doesn't set expectations for what that game is, because it would simply be lying to people what Battlefront is. We don't want or need the Battlefront name misused. Imagine if Respawn released a game called Star Wars Battlefront Fallen Order, and it was this. It would make absolutely no sense. Another thing I want to talk about relating to Battlefield and DICE is, a request I see very often is for 128 player battles in Battlefront. Now, DICE were only finally able to achieve 128 player battles on current-gen hardware in Battlefield 2042, so it was simply just not possible on last-gen consoles with Battlefront 2, and the last-gen versions of 2042 also did not include that player count. However, when players actually experienced the 128 player battles at launch, they hated it. It's one of the most hated things about Battlefield 2042. It made the game so much worse for most players. So much so that DICE had to make 64 player versions of game modes for 2042 on current-gen consoles and PC. Plus, the brand new Battlefield is completely scrapping 128 players for 64 total once again. These are just some of the hundreds of thousands of problems a future Battlefront developer would need to solve. People want bigger number because bigger number means good to a lot of people, but ultimately quantity is not quality. Going back to Battlefront 2 now, and one of the factors in Battlefront 2's current peak in player count is the Fortnite season and update. I wanted to share some very interesting data with you all about it. Many people are under the impression that the Star Wars season of Fortnite is actually doing very, very well. That's actually not the case in the grand scheme of things. The peak player count for this main season is the lowest in nearly 2 years. And that was before the Star Wars content actually even came out. The Star Wars update did not really massively bump up the numbers like you would have thought. I personally assumed it would have been much higher. It did get some bump, and the player count before the Star Wars update is slightly higher, but it's still very much down compared to all the previous seasons for the past 2 years almost. This data tells us a few things. One, it is known that Star Wars as a brand is not as strong as it was a few years ago, and this further adds evidence to it. To publishers, making a new licensed Star Wars game is just not the 100% guaranteed success rate it was before. Even though we all know there is a sizable demand, as we've seen in the past few days, for a multiplayer Star Wars game, and no other competing games directly with it, aside from Battlefront 2, which hasn't had an update in 5 years, the suits just don't want to take any risk in this economy and the state of this industry, which is absolutely dire right now. Next, some Star Wars fans do not want to play Fortnite for this Star Wars gaming fix. You can't blame them either. I know some people have been just telling people, just play Fortnite for Battlefront 3. No. Fortnite is not Battlefront 3 in any way, shape or form. People look to Battlefront for their proper Star Wars multiplayer experience, or any of the other countless single-player games that go back decades. Plus, even good content in Fortnite can't dramatically bring in players. That is quite a sign of the times. It's also possible that a bunch of people that play Fortnite have absolutely no interest in Star Wars or hate Star Wars, and they aren't playing Fortnite now, and those people have been replaced with people that wouldn't typically play Fortnite. There is, of course, a bunch of people that are only tuning in for the Star Wars stuff, and that's great, but it isn't that much when you compare it to previous seasons where there wasn't Star Wars stuff. Another stat I find interesting is how many people are using Star Wars skins and which ones are the most popular. At the time of making this video, the most used Star Wars skin in Fortnite this season is Apprentice Evie. She is an original Fortnite Star Wars character with 630,000 people using that skin. Meanwhile, only 130,000 people have used the real, official, free First Order Stormtrooper skin. Seriously, a free Trooper skin is a fraction of a paid Fortnite skin. Let that sink in. Meanwhile, on the opposite end, Obi-Wan, Han Solo and Lando, 3 iconic legacy characters, are barely used this season, and they almost always are at the bottom. Of course, newer skins will mostly do best, but Evie is a non-canon Star Wars Fortnite character, and she's dominating the charts. It's not even close. Next up is Poe with like 90 odd thousand, and he's also part of the Battle Pass. Then behind that is Padme, and so on and so on. Of course, we are sort of mid-season, so these aren't full representative of the entire season. It would be interesting to take a look at the charts when the season is over, especially with some skins taking a lot longer to unlock. All of this content is provided by Fortnite.gg. Another thing I wanted to discuss in this video is a quick note in relation to my previous video. So since I started making YouTube videos back in 2011, I've applied the same philosophy to all my videos. Share the facts and truth, plus provide logical, realistic reasons for things. I know that not everyone wants to hear the truth about Battlefront or the industry, but I have and never will bring myself to lie to myself or my audience. For those that have not seen my videos before and weren't around for the glory days of Battlefront, I was one of the few creators that actually got to spend a lot of time with the DICE developers. I got to play the game before it was even revealed and check out various content updates and things before they did come out. I got to learn a lot from those developers, plus give my feedback and my own community's feedback to them about the game. I even got the opportunity to ask the main man running Battlefront questions from my own community, and he delivered with great answers. I'm very thankful to those developers for giving me a lot of knowledge of how Battlefront was to make, and how and why things just simply aren't or weren't possible. A lot of what I've been able to share over the past 7 years or so has come from those developers who made this great game themselves. They are the people that made the game, and they are extremely knowledgeable, not just in making games, but also Star Wars as well. Some of the developers I got to meet many times are some of the biggest Star Wars fans I've ever met, and I've met a lot in my time on doing YouTube, and those guys just knew Star Wars very well, and also how to make a great game. Developing games is no easy feat. Every single game that comes out is a miracle at the end of the day, and Battlefront 2 was no different. The game had various other things working against it that other games simply don't have to face. And that leads into what's next for Star Wars gaming in terms of multiplayer. Whatever is next has got to probably be a little bit simpler than what Battlefront 2 is. It's got to appeal to a lot of people and also not take 5 years to make. That is one of the issues. So that means it's not going to have the sheer amount of content Battlefront 2 does have, which people won't be happy about, but I think we have to accept it. Otherwise, we may never get anything released at this rate. Given that there hasn't been a new multiplayer Star Wars game since Battlefront 2 in the last 5 years, and Hunters has now failed, I am hopeful that there will be something. Much more so now that there is a lot of people showing interest in Battlefront 2, not just from inside the Battlefront community, but also wider, past those walls that we've built up, and people are coming in and checking it out for even the first time. A Star Wars multiplayer game is not the same as just another generic multiplayer title that comes out and dies within a few months, or years, or weeks in the form of, well, Concord. There is a gap for something, whether it's Battlefront or something else that's smaller scale and could potentially lead us to a future Battlefront, which is ironic considering Star Wars First Assault was kind of that, and that also never came out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything I've talked about in this video, so please do let me know down in the comment section below, and remember to drop a like to help support the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss any future Star Wars Battlefront 2 videos, including Kyber and its release. If you did miss any of my previous videos, please do click on the playlist on screen right now, and I shall see you. If you did miss any of my previous videos, please do click on the playlist on screen right now, and I shall see you in my next video. Goodbye.